Where'd this come from?
I found it.
Well, let's both play.
You really don't want me to play?
Captain Howdy said no.
Who's Captain Howdy?
You're gonna die up there.
I need reassignment.
You're the best we've got.
I think I've lost my faith.
Is there someone inside you?
Sometimes.
Who is it?
I don't know.
Is it Captain Howdy? You ever heard of exorcism?
How do you go about getting an exorcism?
I beg your pardon? I'm Damien Karras. I'd like to help you. Where's Reagan?
In here with us.
I believe we should begin. Avoid conversations where the demon. The demon is a liar. He will mix lies with the truth
Why, Dimmy?
to attack us. Do not listen.
That thing isn't my daughter.
It is he who commands you. The power of Christ compels you.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
Welcome to Dorking Out. My name is Sonia Mansfield, and what an excellent day for an exorcism. Joining me is my podcasting sister from another mister and the co-host of Dorking Out, Margot D. Hello, my friend.
Captain Howdy, is my co-host beautiful? Captain Howdy, that's not very nice.
Captain Howdy's such a dick.
He is.
Such a dick. We are dorking out about 1973's The Exorcist, and there's a little bit more. So if you listen for the dorking out and then stay for our interview with Nat Segaloff. I hope I pronounced that right, and I'm sorry if I didn't, Nat. He wrote The Exorcist Legacy. It's 50 Years of Fear. It's a really fun interview. He was so fun to talk to, so please stick around for that. He has some really good, like, behind-the-scenes stuff about the movie and why it is still scaring the shit out of us 50 years later. This one is directed by William Friedkin, R.I.P. That's and then screenplay by William Peter Blatty, and it's based on his book, and it stars Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair and Max van Sydow. Sydow, thank you, and Jason Miller. What do you think about Jason Miller?
He's hot.
Hubba hubba.
I mean, father, what a waste, we would call him when I was a kid.
I've never heard that.
Really?
That's hilarious. I was like, all I was thinking was, this is like Hot Priest before Fleabag. Like, before Fleabag was a thing, we had Jason Miller as Father Karras in here because he's so hot. Look, this
he's
go ahead.
Who's his son? His son is Jason. No, his son is in The Lost Boys. Patrick.
Yes,
Jason That's his son.
Oh my God. Well, that explains a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of hot in those jeans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he could get in these jeans.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Wear Catholic school uniform.
Oh my God. I really, really didn't expect our Exorcist podcast to get so horny
So
right
horny.
from the start. Look, this movie it came out in 1973, so obviously we didn't see it in the theater. Or maybe we have really bad parents who took their babies to see The Exorcist. Even my parents, notorious for not caring about ratings, did not take their baby to see The Exorcist. When did you first see The Exorcist?
I can't remember, but it was on TV, obviously, and it wasn't rental. And I think it was like, it might have been like the ABC movie of the week thing like that.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, but it still freaked me. I wasn't prepared. I knew about the pea soup.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the head turning, and that kind of messed me up.
Yeah, I saw it too early, for sure, on like one of the pay movie channels, whether it was our Showtime or whatever. And it scared the shit out of me. Like, absolutely scared the shit out of me, and didn't watch it again for a really long time until they did the re-release in like 2000 where they added the spider walk and all of that. And even then I thought it was terrifying, but everyone around me and my sister were giggling, and I couldn't comprehend that they were giggling during The Exorcist. I mean, I assume it's because they're uncomfortable with actually being scared, because I still think it's scary.
It is, but I think like once you know something's coming up,
Yeah.
you're gonna, and also, yeah, that's how you react to it. I meet people occasionally that are like, it's kind of lame. I don't think it's that scary or anything. Maybe it's because you and I are raised Catholic that any of these that feature a priest in the church and stuff really hits a nerve with me. Yeah.
Well, and we talk a little bit about this in our interview that you can hear later at the end of the episode, where we talk about how movies don't change, but we change, right? And like, this movie scared me when I was younger because I would put myself in Reagan's bed, I guess, and the thought that something would like take over your body and there's nothing you could do about it, and like people don't believe you until it's like too late and it gets that far along. And now as an adult with a child that is the same age as Reagan in this movie scares me for a whole other reason. But also, yeah, we were both raised Catholic, so there's that sort of thing as well.
The devil is scary when you're raised with that.
Yes.
Of God and the devil and the fight for your soul, that kind of thing. It's yeah, she's not possessed by just anything. It's the devil himself. Like,
yes.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's not rando demon.
No.
It's the devil.
Right.
It's not Gary, the demon.
Gary. I'm thinking of Parenthood. Oh, Gary. Hi, Gary.
Do you want to eat with us, Gary? No. So people, like, every once in a while when I get it in my head to like watch The Exorcist, I always forget that there's like 15 or 20 minutes before we even get to like Washington, D.C. with Ellen Burstyn. There's this whole thing at the beginning with Father Marin, and he's in northern Iraq, and he's like digging up artifacts, and he's finding all these old ancient like demon things. I always forget about that part, always.
Yeah, you're like, what's going on? And then the music is the soundtrack is so annoying. Like it's like bees buzzing or something. It's like that.
Yes.
And I mean that, and that's what it's supposed to do. Like, it's supposed to just make you really nervous.
Yes, it works.
And it works. Yeah, you're uncertain, like, what's going on. And Max von Sydow was only 40 when he made the movie. So they old him up because they want a really old priest to, like, somebody who's been doing it for decades kind of thing.
Yes.
To show up in the end. So, but it's like, because you and I have seen movies where they do not have good makeup. We're thinking Peggy Sue Got Married. There's that whole sequence where in the high school reunion, and they all like wear baby powder in their wigs and like called it a day. You know, a pillow under the shirt. There you go.
Yes.
This is intense. Like, he really does look like he would eventually look.
Well, the makeup and the effects in this movie, I think they really hold up for me.
Yes.
I think, this was before like visual effects and green screens and things like that. Like, these really hold up, and they're really doing these things, and they're really shaking that bed, and they're wearing like harnesses to like pull them and things like it's pretty intense.
Yeah, and they had should we talk about the story and then go into...
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have our 20 minutes of Father Marin digging around northern Iraq, which, again, I always forget about. But then we get to the stuff we actually know, which is they get to Washington, D.C., and we meet Chris McNeil, and that is Ellen Burstyn, who's so fucking good in this movie. Like,
such a rock star.
Yes, and she's an actress. She's filming a movie there, and she has a 12-year-old daughter named Reagan. That is Linda Blair. She's so cute. She's
Adorable.
so adorable. Everybody drank. Like, very sweet.
Very innocent. Like, she would be in all these TV movies in the 70s that are about drinking and all these, and she would have, like, she dated older men, but she was like she's such a cute little actress. Like, Reagan's so innocent.
Yes.
Like, she just wants to get a horsey. She just wants to play with her Ouija board.
She's a horse
and hang
girl.
out.
She's a horse girl.
She's a horse girl.
We all knew a horse girl.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, but she's very sweet, and they have a very sweet relationship. I love the stuff between Chris and Reagan. Like, I think they're very lovely to each other, I guess is what I wrote down here in my notes. I think that a lot of movies now, they always put like a conflict between mother and daughter, or father and son, or parent and child, to like, and then the like exorcism would bring them back together. I like that they don't do that. I like that they have this really great relationship.
And Ellen Burstyn is very protective of her daughter.
Yes.
And I love Kitty. That's her assistant.
Yes.
Her assistant that, help. Like, she gets invitations to the White House. Chris is really famous, the actress.
Yes.
And she's a boss. Like, she doesn't take shit from anybody.
Which,
and you knew that right away, which I love.
I love that too. Like, they show her like coming out of her trailer and like talking to the director and like, why is this happening? All this stuff. And in 1973, we didn't see a lot of characters like Chris McNeil. Like,
or they'd label her a bitch.
Yeah,
and everybody would hate her.
Yeah, she's a single mom. She's clearly doing very well for herself. Her house is beautiful. She has like staff to like work for her. She's supporting her daughter. The dad is clearly not in the picture. There's a part where she's calling him to like yell at him because he didn't even call Reagan on her birthday. Like, that's how protective she is that she calls Reagan's dad and is letting him fucking have it for not calling her on her birthday. Like, she's very protective.
Yeah.
And she's badass.
And she's a badass. Like on the set, she doesn't understand something, she'll mention it, she'll bring it up, but she'll still do the job because it's the gig and that's what she has to do. But when Reagan starts to have these weird episodes, with these catatonic episodes where one point she like urinates on the rug during a party.
Yeah, it looks like she's sleepwalking. But
right.
Yeah. It's very awkward.
That's what do you do in that moment? Yeah. In her beautiful gown, she's got and then her daughter is like, she's on her bed and the bed's shaking and she's just getting more and more violent.
Yes.
And more intense. And then so Linda Blair, and who is fantastic throughout this movie. And she's 12 years old. If you think about like what she's doing.
Kid. Yeah. The stuff, because there is shit in this movie where I'm like, fuck. Like, I don't even know if they would do this now. I mean, not in a studio movie. They would not.
Not a studio movie. And also, they do. There were other actresses playing different parts, so that Linda Blair. So there's certain things she didn't do, but the vocal work was Mercedes McCambridge, and she was this old timey actress, and she part of it was like the 50s with the communism scares and things like that. She was with some radical people, became an alcoholic, just did theater, and then they pick her up to do this movie, and she was sober for a long time. And then they picked her, and all she does is the vocalizing of a Zuzu that's possessed. Reagan, and she said she went to the studio, and she said, "Give me cigarettes and some scotch, tie me to this chair. Whatever she's going through, I'm going to go through."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so she's really making all those sounds.
Wow.
It boggles the mind.
No, that's some serious fucking dedication.
Yeah. Yeah. She's old school. Like,
she's super
committed.
Yeah. And then we're also meeting Father Damien Karras, right? And that is Jason Miller. who we've and he's obviously he's hot priest.
Father Water Waste.
And he is his mother is like not doing well. He's in Washington D.C. She still lives in New York, and he confides in like one of his colleagues, like he's having a real crisis of faith and he's really struggling. He's thinking about leaving the priesthood. He wants to go back to New York and take care of his mother. And there's a scene, it's so fucking sad, when like the mother hurts herself and she ends up in the hospital, and he goes to visit her in the hospital, and he is swarmed by other patients who just like want help and comfort because he's a priest. Like they see this
He's
priest,
wearing his collar.
yeah, and the mother is so sad. It's just it really hurts to see. Like I don't even want to talk about it anymore. It's going to make me cry.
No, she's old. She's very old. She's infirmed. I guess she has diabetes or something.
Yeah.
But he's trying to take care of her, and she's in New York of 1973 in Hell's Kitchen. It wasn't great,
Right.
and he's scared. He doesn't want anything to happen to her. You know, those stairs and everything. But I get it. She's like, this is my house. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Because I get her. At the time, I'm like, just get out of there. It's dangerous. But now I'm like, I'm not leaving unless it's
Right.
yeah. But she's wonderful. And so then he feels guilty because she's in a hospital, and he's made a vow of poverty because the Catholic Church is messed up. That's why we're not Catholics anymore.
Yes.
But he can't. So he's, like you said, he's having this crisis of faith. He becomes friendly in Chris's kind of circle of friends. They're gradually realizing Reagan is going to one doctor, to the other specialist.
Oh,
She's
that
going to
stuff is
everybody.
so frustrating.
And your heart breaks for the both of them because
Yes.
she just wants an answer.
Yeah.
And nobody knows. And it's also like, she's a woman. No one's just going to tell her they don't know. They all have to act like, right. And that's the most, I love it when she's like so angry, like, just tell me the truth. We got to try. And so the last chance she can think of is an exorcism.
Yes.
And they don't really dwell too much on that. Like and I love, who am I thinking of? The old Lee J. Cobb. I love him as the older cop.
Oh, yes.
That befriends Karis. Like they make up titles for movies, and they have a good friendship. But yeah, the director of the movie that Chris is working on, he falls out of the window of her home, and
Quote,
it's a very
unquote,
famous
falls.
yeah. Shoved by Reagan. He's a bit of a drunk, and people think he just drank too much. And it's a famous steps that you see in movies. And so the cop is trying to figure out like what really happened. And Father Karras is trying to figure out how to help her. And she's saying things that only no one would know.
Right.
Like talking in his mother's language, and her voice is like she's talking backwards.
Yes.
They play. Yeah. And so there's nothing they could think to do except to get an exorcism. So then he's like, we got to have the big cheese. So the big cheese is Max von Sydow. And when he shows up, it's like, you strap in, man. Like, it's on.
Yes. And I want to say, like, we all understand the frustration of going from like doctor to doctor and trying to like get help for things. And it's super common even now. Like, doctors dismiss a lot of people. Like, I understand, like, they're doing the best they can, but like, she is so frustrated. She's like losing her shit, and they're still looking for like medical reasons for why this is happening. And the things she is doing, I'm like, it boggles my mind that they're like, maybe we should just do another CAT scan or something. Like, she like. A cat, like, meds cannot help with the fact that the whole bed is like shaking and basically levitating, and like the way her skin is changing, and all the stuff with the crucifix. I'm not even going to get into that.
No,
like, all of that. It's
yeah.
like a complete personality change. Like, and just in the superhuman strength that she seems to have, like, all of that stuff. There's no medical reason for that to be happening, but that they're doctors, right? They're just gonna, that's what they're looking for. But finally they get the big cheese.
That's
to
what
come
they
in
call 'em.
and perform an exorcism. And boy, that exorcism is fucking brutal.
It's really, I'm glad it's not longer. It takes a while
Yes.
to get there, but once it's, like I said, they strap you in. It is so fucking intense, this movie. The like you said, the vomiting, but there's also like when, she has the words "help me" on her stomach.
Yes.
Oh my God, that broke my heart.
It's so awful.
But the levitating from the bed, and these, and then eventually, okay, spoilers for
Yes.
The Exorcist, but the older priest, Max von Sydow, keels over
Yes.
while they're doing this. And this also freaked me. The first time I saw this really got to me as a kid. The father, Father Karras, excuse me, Jason Miller, he grabs her
Yes.
and is basically instructing the devil, take me,
Yes.
not her. Take me. And I'm the big prize because I'm a priest, right?
Right. Huge prize. What a good
That's huge
get.
That's a great get.
Hot priest.
he-
Get him.
So she goes into his body. The devil goes into his body. His face changes, and he just has enough sense to jump out the window to
my
kill himself,
gosh.
so that he can't hurt her. And the devil is gone, vanquished.
Yes.
And then he has a friend that's a priest that's also friends with Chris. He happens to be there, and he gives him last rites, and it's so heartbreaking.
It's so sad.
It really is.
Yes. It's the fact that he dies is so sad. The way the devil is trying to fuck with him the whole time too, about like, your mother's in here with us, you want to give her a message, and like, mixing like lies with the truth so you believe it. Like, the devil is like taunting him the whole time. It's ugh. Bah!
Yeah.
All the stuff with the tongue, the giant pointy gross tongue. It's like making obscene gestures at him. I mean, I kind of understand, but I get it. It's also scary. Like, this movie really messes me up, and I watched it twice for this.
I watch it every year at this time.
Yeah, I
watch all the stuff about it. Yeah, it's really scary. It holds up. I think it's one of his best works, and it's a horror film for sure.
Yes,
but it's also a psychological drama.
Mhm.
It's also about a mother just doing everything to protect her kid.
Yeah, that's why I think it's anybody can take different things from this movie and connect to it, which is one of the reasons why it's lasted as long as it has. The practical effects really hold up. And it's just really scary. It's so well done too. It's a little over 2 hours. It doesn't feel it to me, other than the like 15 minutes at the beginning in northern Iraq. Like, this movie's it moves. Like, I'm invested. I'm into it, and I super care about Chris and Reagan. I don't want anything bad to happen to them. So, I mean, it's such a hot take, everybody. The Exorcist is really good. It was nominated for a bunch of Oscars, which rarely happens for horror movies. It was nominated for like 10 Oscars. I think that and The Sting were nominated. It ended up winning for adapted screenplay and sound, but both Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair were nominated. I mean, I think Jason Miller probably should have been nominated.
Yeah.
It's so fucking good. Like, again, you could take anything from it that you want. You could connect with Hot Priest. You can connect with the mom, the daughter. There's so much. It's so fucking good.
So then we go to the second one. Not good. And it's, unless the set is better.
Yeah, it's not. Here's the thing. I knew that people don't like the second one, but I was like, I think it's going to work for me because it comes out in it came out in 80, and I was like, ooh, 80s horror's my jam. And then I watched it and I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. Like, it's pretty bad. And Linda Blair is, again, she's so beautiful, and like, it's not my thing. I like the third one though. What do you think of the third one?
I've seen the third one before. It's with George C. Scott, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got one of the best jump scares ever.
Yes.
It's so clever. You'll know it when you see it.
Yeah, we're not spoiling.
Not spoiling it. I think it's genuinely scary and interesting.
Yes.
Is it an Exorcist movie? I mean, whatever. But I thought that was fine. And then is the fourth one the one you saw? Is that the most recent one?
I watched.
Or is there one between that?
I think there
Horror
might.
fans are pissed right now.
They're so pissed. I believe there is a prequel movie that came out in the early 2000s. I actually didn't see that one. I have been on an Exorcist rewatch of the franchise. Well, I guess it's just a watch because I hadn't seen all of these. I should watch it. I haven't watched it. I did watch Exorcist Believer last night. I was pretty disappointed, to be honest. I love Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair. I wanted different things for those characters, but I was happy to see them again. There's stuff in it that's definitely sad and fucked up, but I wouldn't say I was scared.
See, that's what you want. You
Yeah.
want to be scared.
Yeah.
There's the TV series, which was you just started. I was season 1, and it's a spoiler, by the way, because it's halfway through the season. You find out that Gina Davis is the lead and Alan Ruck plays her husband.
Yes.
She has a daughter, and her daughter's going through stuff.
Yes.
But at the midpoint, you find out that she's actually Reagan, and that Reagan and her mother went through some really hard times after 73, and that her mom basically wrote like a cheesy bestseller.
Yes.
All about it, just to kind of make some money because the dad, once again, isn't in the picture.
Right.
But what happens to poor Reagan? Because in the movie, we get the idea like this was all secret. Nobody really knows what's going on.
Right.
And she forgot. So we're just going to forget, we're just going to try to move on, even though her PTSD will be intense, or Ellen Burstyn's anyway. But no, in the movie, it's Sharon Gless plays Chris McNeil.
Yeah. I've only watched the first episode, so I haven't gotten that far yet, but I'm looking forward to it because
it's an interesting watch.
Yeah.
I mean, first, I need more Gina Davis and Sharon Gless on my screens. Like that just needs to happen. But it was an interesting take. How but it's also kind of a bummer. Like, I don't want Chris doing that.
Yeah. So then I guess at this point, like, I'm not really spoiling like Believer, because Believer also kind of picks up that story of Chris has written this book, and Reagan was like, I wish you hadn't done that, kind of thing. And so they're kind of estranged from each other.
Aww.
And that makes me very sad. And I don't like that. By the way, that's not even the main focus of the movie. It just happens to be in the movie, and it like bummed me out. But because I was watching The Exorcist Believer for laughs, apparently. But I will say this, like, everyone in Exorcist Believer they're good. Like, everyone in it is good. It's just, it didn't work for me. I really wanted to like it because David Gordon Green also did the Halloween reboot, and I loved the first of the 3 that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's like diminishing returns.
Returns.
Yeah, but I loved the first one, and I was kind of hoping Believer was going to be like that. And when I didn't get that, I was a little disappointed. I mean, maybe I could revisit in a couple years and I'll feel differently with managed expectations, but that's where I am with that one right now. I'm looking forward to watching more of the show, though, because I really like what I've seen so far.
It's good writing and it's great performances. It's just going in a different direction. It has a hot priest, but he's gay. Hello.
He is hot. He was in Sense8, which I watched like last year, I think. He's hot priest. Hot priest alert.
Exactly. But we know that we'll talk about it in our interview, but it is based on a true-ish story.
Yes.
There is a boy in Maryland that was a teenager that was like missed a lot of school, and supposedly he was had an exorcism for his behavior, and then he grew up to be somebody like worked at NASA.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But we'll talk about it in our interview with the author. I was saying, like, yeah, I'd rather be exercised than go to school. I don't want to. I hated high school.
I think I speculated that'd be like the really dark take on Ferris Bueller.
Exactly.
And then he fakes being possessed by the devil to get out of going to school. Oh goodness. Watching The Exorcist during October is always, I guess for lack of a better word, fun.
It's appropriate.
It's appropriate, and it definitely, it holds up. So if you haven't watched it, I watched it, I believe it's streaming on HBO Max. We're going to skip our recs this week because we're going to get to the interview, but I thought you might like to know some of the other movies that came out in 1973.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's start with number 10, Jesus Christ Superstar.
I really liked that when I was a kid. We played that album a lot.
Yeah, my sister likes it a lot too, and then we went and saw the new stage production, and she was like, this is not the same. They made it all like 90s alt rock, and she was like, no, I want the hippie free love version. She was disappointed, but the movie, people love it. Serpico.
Good movie, also a bummer.
Super bummer. Walking Tall.
I don't think I've ever seen that. That's a Billy Jack one.
I believe that is correct. Robin Hood.
Wait, what?
The animated Robin Hood.
Oh, the sexy Robin Hood.
The sexy fox.
The foxy Robin Hood.
By the way, we're not alone in that. That's a whole thing.
No, that's a thing. Yeah.
Go on the internet and Google like Robin Hood
early
fox.
childhood crushes.
Number 6 is Magnum Force.
That's Clint Eastwood, right?
Yes, it is. Number 5, we did an episode on this one, The Way We Were.
Great movie.
Yeah. American Graffiti.
Great movie. We should do that one.
We should. That would be really fun to talk about. I haven't watched American Graffiti in years.
Especially because Suzanne Summers passed away.
Oh my God. Let's do that in November.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, along with Crossroads. The Sting.
Great movie.
Yep. And then the number 1 movie was The Exorcist. Huge fucking hit. Pretty bananas because it came out and like, was it released like late
the
in
day
the year?
after Christmas? So we'll talk about it
Yes.
in our interview, but the author was the publicist for like the movie theater chain or something.
Yes.
And he had to try to get in Boston, it's a Catholic region. They were already like not too happy about this movie coming out because the novel was a big hit before it.
Yes.
And so he set up a screening on Christmas Day for movie reviewers. So then it was on a Monday and the movie came out on a Tuesday. And then so for the weekly papers, that usually comes out Thursday. Anyway,
Yeah.
But yeah, he got a bunch of people to come out, and then he pretty much knew they were going to give it a rave, and they did.
Yeah, because it's good.
Yeah.
I think you did the songs with our interview,
Yes.
So I think we could just wrap this one up and stay tuned for the interview. I just want to say, if you like the sound of our voices, we host What a Creep. It's where we talk about creeps of the past and the present. Find us. You could find us there. And if you like Dorking Out, you can follow us on all the things at Dorking Out Show. Do you want to tell people where they can find you, Margot?
Yeah, I'm at Brooklyn Margot for Twitter, for Blue Sky, and for TikTok. And then I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Threads and Instagram, and that's my site.
Okay, and you can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on all the things, including Blue Sky and the TikTok. All right, let's get into the interview, and we'll be back next week with either American Graffiti or Crossroads.
We're flipping a coin, folks.
That's right. The power of November compels us. Thanks for joining us. Are you already recording, Margot?
Yeah, hit record.
Okay, great. Let's get into it. Can I ask you a million questions about your book?
Yeah, sure. You go ahead. I got plenty of time here.
First, I wanted to ask, why The Exorcist?
Because Gone with the Wind had been done.
Well,
What kind of question are you talking about? Why The Exorcist?
I'm getting starting off really well. Meaning, like, why did you want to write about The Exorcist?
Well, the stock line I've been given when people ask me that is, I've been possessed by The Exorcist for half a century. Drum roll, please. But it's because I really did. I mean, I started off the day before it opened as the publicist for the Boston theater that was showing it. It opened on December 26, 1973, and we had arranged through William Friedkin's largesse a press screening for December 25th, 1973, so the critics could get their reviews thoughtfully to their deadline. Now, it doesn't take a genius to realize that December 25th is Christmas Day. And so you can imagine all of these critics being torn away from the bosom of their families to see a movie about a little girl whose head spins around. I wasn't allowed to see the film. I had to stand outside the theater guarding it so that patrons wouldn't walk in accidentally. And so I didn't see it for a few days after that. And so, we showed the film and it was over and everybody went away. And we didn't know we were supposed to throw up until everybody started throwing up the next day. I mean, the manager of the theater in Boston said he was lucky if people made it from the auditorium to the street before blowing lunch on his carpet. So I had to write about that, but it took me 50 years to be able to put all the pieces in place.
Why do you think we're talking, it's at their anniversary here. Why is it still scary to people all these years later, do you think?
Well, there's a couple of reasons, but I think the most cogent one is that the movie harvests all of the material that has been driven into people's heads for thousands of years by churches. And it kind of has a resonance, if you will, because it summons up beliefs that people have been, sort of poo-pooing. And yet they're very, very real. I mean, like the reason that religion survives is that people have been brainwashed into believing it. And The Exorcist mines that. The other thing that I think makes it so popular and so pervasive is the veracity with which it was made. William Friedkin, who came out of documentaries, worked with makeup artist Dick Smith and mechanical genius Marcel Varcouture to create effects that happened really in front of the camera. There are no special effects in The Exorcist. But Reagan really floats, the doors really crack, she flips up and down on the bed. I mean, all of these things really happen. Not because she was possessed, but because of the mechanical effects. And like that uncanny valley that destroys so many CGI films, The Exorcist really did happen.
Well, yeah, can you talk about that a little bit? I'm really interested in that story because I think the person that it turns out the person that was the case was a boy, and he grew up to work for NASA.
Isn't that amazing? Anybody can be redeemed. There was a boy in Cottage City, Maryland, which is a blue-collar community, a good bazooka shot away from Washington, D.C. I grew up, by the way, in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is right outside of D.C., but I wasn't possessed that I know of. This boy was in a normal house, and he was a teenager, and one day he started showing signs that people concluded were possession. Several priests were involved, some of them kept diaries, and there were enough contrivances that we're not really sure he was possessed. A marvelous scholar, writer, and rock critic named Mark Upsasnik did real boots-on-the-ground research, finding out who this boy was by triangulating yearbooks, who graduated what year, what streets people lived on, talking to local firefighters. I mean, it's some of the most amazing detective work I've ever heard. And Mark was kind enough to cooperate with me in letting me use some of his stuff. I'm sorry, I'm getting a phone call, and I can't take it. So, goodbye.
What are you?
We're
Well,
a loosey-goosey
things
kind of
about
show.
Hey, I'm popular. But anyway, it's the devil calling, saying, you're talking about me. But there's some question whether the boy really was possessed or whether he just didn't want to go to school.
Valid. That was me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope you weren't this extreme. I mean,
6th to the 9th grade. I didn't want to go to school. Yeah.
Well, this is why Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a documentary. High school is hell.
It is.
It is. You don't need the hell mouth. It's hell, and that's what it. But we're getting off subject here. Anyway, the boy did grow up and supposedly had no memory of it, although he probably had some scars from what he did to himself. And there's every indication that it was a contrivance by the church to increase their political power.
Wow. I like
the other thing. By the way, the other thing that makes me suspect, it was covered in a story below the fold in the Washington Post. And the Washington Post is not an amateur paper. It seems to me that if there was any truth to the story, the Washington Post, who broke Watergate, would have done a follow-up. And there's nothing.
Yeah.
I like this idea you're pitching for like an alternate Ferris Bueller, where a kid pretends to be obsessed to get out of school for the day. I would watch.
Well, that'd be a documentary if I remember my school years.
Can you talk a little bit about the onset? I thought that you were the unit publicist. Is that different?
No, the unit publicist was Howard Newman. I was just a local publicist for the theater chain, showing it in one city, Boston.
Okay, so then when they were, I just wanted to get those differentiations out there. So the unit, what was it like on set for Linda Blair? How did they protect her? I mean, I know William Friedkin could be an intense director. I know you guys were very good friends, but he admits that in his we talked about the French Connection recently. He was an intense man. Like when he wanted something, he wanted it, and he didn't really want to hear too much, fuss about it. So I would just like to, especially the way women were portrayed in media at the time. Like this is two women that are the leads.
Little Linda Blair, who was one of the brightest, most outgoing, most centered and sane people you could ever want to talk to or meet. The only protection she really needed was an electric blanket during the exorcism scenes because it was so cold in that room. Billy was very protective of her. Ellen Burstyn became a surrogate mother to her, and of course Linda's mother was herself around. The only thing that's a little bit strange is that the reason they shot it in New York, the cover story was because Billy didn't want the actors driving to the Warner Brothers studios and seeing palm trees where they were supposed to be in Washington, D.C. But in those days, the child labor laws of New York City were far more lenient than those of California. And since it took several hours to put on Linda's makeup every day and another hour or so to take it off, they would have had maybe 5 minutes to shoot with her. So New York was chosen because the child labor laws permitted her to work several more hours in front of the camera. But any rumors about her becoming possessed or damaged or hurt, I mean, they were just BS. The only thing that happened was in the contrivance that was supposed to bounce her off the bed, she was in a harness that was form-fitted to her torso. And at one point, the straps came loose, and this thing was actually batting her. And so in one shot, her screams, "Please make it stop," in the film are real. Nobody knew it was happening until it was over, and then everything was all better again.
They needed a safe word on that set.
Well, I don't want to go into that.
We just know that Ellen Burstyn is a very famous scene. Spoilers for The Exorcist, but there's a scene where her head turns around and it freaks everybody out in the room, and Ellen Burstyn falls to the ground when she's pulled, and she wound up really hurting her back and neck.
Yeah, they used an elastic device that one of the stunt people had harnessed Ellen to, and she was supposed to be pulled back against the wall as a result of having been backhanded by Reagan. And it was done a couple of different times, and Ellen swears to this day that Billy had given a secret nod to the stunt person to give her an extra special hard tug. And in fact, it did hurt her back, and she did go to chiropractor, but she told me that it's all better now.
Was there anyone you didn't get to talk to for the book that you wanted to talk to?
Yeah, Linda Blair. I tried. I also tried when I was doing my biography of William Friedkin back in 1990. I called every agent, I called every manager, every business contact, and I could not get through or anybody to respond. I found quotes from her, and I'm sorry that didn't work out. I'd like to meet her someday,
Yeah.
But unfortunately, most everybody else is dead. Jason Miller's gone, Max von Sydow is gone, William Peter Blatty is gone, although he and I were friends, and I have stuff from him I've never released that I was using in the book. And of course, Billy, it's hard when you make a book about a 50-year-old movie because not everybody has survived.
Right, of course. Is there a reason she doesn't want to talk about it? Is it she's just trying to distance herself, or she's trying to leave that in the past? Or
I don't think she even heard my requests. I think that people simply block things along the way. Many times, as Margot's probably finding out with her book, you don't get through to people not because they've even heard you've asked, but because somebody becomes indomitable in the meantime. From everything I know about Linda Blair, she's an elegant young woman who has a charity for animals, which in my book makes her blessed.
Yes.
Yeah, I know she's a big animal lover, and that's a big part of her life. Yeah, she acted throughout the 70s. She was like TV movie queen, and she was just a teenager.
Yeah, well, I think she wrote her star as far as she could, and it's kind of awkward if you're a performer to be remembered best for something that you did when you were a teenager.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's true. While you were talking to all these different people and doing all the research, was there a story that super surprised you?
Yeah, but I'm often asked that question, and the thing that surprised me was that there's still a controversy about the so-called curse of the exorcist. And I've handled it by saying there was no curse of the exorcist. Okay, so the set burned down. Okay, so people got hurt. Okay, so one of the actors died. Okay, so a crewman lost a toe. Okay, so Max von Sydow's brother died. Okay, so the statue of Pazuzu wound up in Singapore for some reason. But there's no curse. Frankly, if there's any curse of The Exorcist, it's that none of the prequels, sequels, or TV series made any money.
I was going to ask you about the TV series because Sonia's been checking up on the sequels, and I just was like, after reading your chapter about it, I'm like, all right, I got to check this out for myself. It's streaming on Hulu, by the way. Oh. It's very interesting how they took Gina Davis. There's another spoiler for you, but they bring Gina Davis as Reagan, and then it's Sharon Gless plays the Ellen Burstyn part. And it's really, it was a really cool, they made it so it's 1978 and she's on San Diego television. And basically Chris had to sell herself out and her daughter out just to survive after all that happened. Because if you end the movie, you think like nobody knew about it. It was a big secret. Yeah, that's one of the problems that informs any sequels. Jeremy Slater, who was the showrunner and co-creator of the Exorcist TV series, did a wonderful job. It's highly credible. The acting is terrific. I think the writing is too. There are a couple of problems with it. One is they had to stretch it over 10 episodes. It really shouldn't have gone more than about 4 or 5. But that's the nature of commercial television, and that gets us into the second reason. The Exorcist TV series was made at a point when broadcast television was being phased out, and cable and not even streaming were coming in. And so you have an Exorcist TV series with no profanity in it, because that would have broken broadcast standards. It has violence, some incredible violence, but it's not as graphic as it would be in some of the later films.
Yeah.
They really were, a television series in search of a medium.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to make that happen, to take that, Hannibal was pretty successful with it.
Yes.
That too.
Yeah.
Can you talk about Jason Miller? I love his performance as Father Karras with what he brought to the movie, and how did he feel about it? Because I know he was a Pulitzer Prize winning playwright.
Yeah, he wrote
that 3 times fast.
He wrote that championship season. He was scouted. At first, they thought they wanted him to write the screenplay. Then they said, no, we want you to act in it. He was a very intense Black Irish. He had some personal problems, and he inhabited the role. And I think they used his own weakness as a man in some ways. He was unfortunately an alcoholic. To kind of add resonance to the fact that his character had lost faith. But he had this wonderful presence. He was a boxer in his part-time, and they used that in the role. He was just extraordinary in the role of Father Karras. And it was one of those lucky casting decisions. Casting is 90% of the film.
Yes, it is. Stacy Keach was going to be that part.
Yes, and they had to buy him out when Friedkin and Blatty discovered Jason Miller.
I'm talking about the lab technician.
I thought you were talking about Legion. He got me doing it. Oh. Well, in the famous arteriogram sequence, which is when the blood spurts out of Linda Blair's neck, and that, by the way, is the scene in which people ran from the theater. not the head turning around or the vomit scene. The man who's administering the anesthetic is actually a lab technician. Billy liked to use real people doing their jobs. And it turned out this man was later implicated in the murder of variety film critic Addison Verrill in what became the cruising killings of gay men in the S&M community in New York, which Gerald Walker wrote about in his book Cruising, and which Billy adapted into a screenplay for the movie of the same name. Mm-hmm. No one knew that at the time. I mean, you don't say, "Oh, hi, is anybody here a serial killer? To be in my movie." No, you don't generally do that.
He also had real priests as well that acted, who I think do a great job in the movie.
Well, it's typecasting. You had, Father Birmingham playing the head of Georgetown University, and you had especially a wonderful man named William O'Malley, Father O'Malley, a Jesuit, playing Father Dyer in the film, and he's the one that Billy had to slap around a little bit to get the reactions from him. But he was, after The Exorcist, he went back to his day job, and he just actually passed a few months ago.
Oh my goodness, he's he the one that playing the piano at the party?
He does, or did play the piano, I suppose. Priests do more than pray. They're also humans.
Yeah, no, that's okay. No, both my parents went to Catholic schools, and they would talk about every once in a while priests would come. They would come over and just hang out at the house, and nuns, not the nuns, sorry, just the priests. Nuns. Yeah. My dad was terrified of nuns.
Yeah, I know. But he has good handwriting.
Yes, yeah, he does. Yeah, he did. Can you tell us just what William Friedkin was like as a person? I know you're both good friends. I mean, like I said, I try to get interviews with him, but it was like, forget it. I was shooting too high to speak to him, but I wish I had, because I'm such a big fan of his work.
Well, I knew Billy through thick and thin, because when I first met him, it was just after The Exorcist had been released, and I was a theater publicist, and in Massachusetts, we were indicted for blasphemy, obscenity, and corrupting the morals of the minors. He was this crazy religious nut named Rita Warren, who lived in Brockton, Massachusetts, had brought her underage daughter to see the R-rated film. Now, why she wasn't in charge with child endangerment, but she got a judge to indict us for these other things is nuts. And I called up William Friedkin's office at Warner Brothers. I'd never met him before. Left word, here's what's happening here. And all of a sudden, I'm in the theater offices one day, and the receptionist gets on the phone. "Nat, it's William Friedkin calling for you on line 1. You got to remember, this is the hottest director in the world. It's in January of 1974. So I pick it up, and Billy is on there with a pep talk. "Nat, you got to stop these people. They're crazy. You've got to remember the First Amendment and it's freedom of the screen and all that." Well, our lawyers went to work and got a summary judgment against the case. And in fact, Rita Warren's case was thrown out on the first day of Lent, which I found was a wonderful irony. But Billy, meanwhile, had gone on a lecture tour and came to Central Massachusetts, where I tried to link up with him. And we just sort of met each other eventually and stayed in touch over the years. In 1988, I asked if I could write his biography, and he said, sure. And it was that simple. And so Hurricane Billy came out from a publisher in 1990. And we were just, in touch over the years. He'd have a sneak preview. He'd have a press conference. I'd be covering him back and forth. It was wonderful. And he never lied to me. He was always honorable. He never, took the mickey out of me or anything. He treated me with respect, and I treated him with respect. I've heard all the stories, and they're probably all true. But we had a certain code. And the code, which you'll find for everybody in Hollywood, if you know what you're doing, you never have any trouble. And I never had any trouble with Bill. And I miss him dearly because he was truly an experience, a gifted man, an autodidact, and a man who changed the trajectory of film.
We've been trying to cover To Live and Die in L.A. for the show, and we can't find it streaming anywhere.
Yeah, they just released it on Blu-ray, I think. So.
Yeah, they did. I think MGM picked up the rights at one point. It was a troubled, not a troubled production, but a troubled release because of the investors and all of that. But I'm sure, Willem Dafoe, Billy Peterson, and John Pankow are still there. I don't know if anybody else, Darlene Krugel. The people are out there. Good luck.
Yeah. I remember seeing that one in the theater and loving it. So
I write about it in Hurricane Billy because Willem Dafoe and Billy Peterson were the two people who talked to me when the page was blank, and I really, really respect and honor them for doing
There's a couple of different cuts of The Exorcist. Do you have a favorite?
The original.
Yeah.
Everybody likes the original cut.
Right?
Ellen Burstyn, everybody. Part of the impetus for releasing the version you've never seen, the director's cut, the director's restored cut, whatever you want to call them, is because Warner Brothers committed money to restoring the film and to releasing it to theaters again, which, of course, increases the profits that people have a share of. But I think that the original Exorcist, where there's no funny business with faces appearing on the walls or the spider walk or any of that stuff, I think they're not really necessary. The only thing I really approve of, and was William Peter Blatty hawked Billy Friedkin for decades to do, was the version you've never seen, which has the restored stairwell scene between Fathers Marin and Karras, where Karras, in between exorcisms, asks, why is the demon doing this? And Father Marin, who has some familiarity with the demon, as we know, says, it isn't the girl that the demon is after. The demon is after us. We want us to wonder, to ask ourselves how the Lord could possibly love creatures as vile and despicable as human beings are. And that's the author's message. And Billy didn't want to put it in the final cut of the film because he said, I'm not making a commercial for the Catholic Church. But after Bill Blatty hawked him for decades, and I mean for decades, they did put it back in. They found the footage and they restored it. And I think the film is better for that.
What about the actress that portrayed Reagan, the body double, the woman who did all of those acrobatics?
Well, there's three different people. Eileen Dietz is the person who was not only Dick Smith's makeup test, and she appears as Captain Howdy in some of the flash frames of the film, but she also was the stand-in, the body double for Linda Blair in a few shots, about 32 seconds worth of film, according to Bud Smith, who was the editor. She got a certain amount of notoriety for claiming or being misunderstood to claim that she played Linda Blair's role. She didn't, and she says, though she plays the demon. That's her point. There was also a contortionist named Kelly Hager and another contortionist, whose name I don't have on the tip of my tongue, who portrayed the scene where Reagan was going backwards down the stairs, the so-called spider walk scene. It's been impossible for either me or Mark Kermode, who may be the world's leading exorcist scholar, to determine exactly who that is who came down the back stairs. It wasn't Eileen Dietz, who is still around. He's on Facebook and has a book and talks about her experience with The Exorcist.
I was gonna say, I can't imagine filming that scene with the backward spider down the stairs. That must have been terrifying to people.
Well, they had to support the actors with wires, and of course, in those days, before CGI, they couldn't eliminate the wires. They looked like somebody going down, like a marionette on wires. I don't think the scene works, and even in the revised versions of the film, I don't think it works for a number of reasons. Bill Blatty thinks it doesn't work because there's too many climaxes. First, we hear about Denning's death, then we hear of the spider walks coming down, and then all sorts of other things happen. And in fact, if you were a mother whose daughter came down the stairs backward with her tongue flicking out, you wouldn't go to another doctor. You'd go right to a witch doctor. And so it really is out of place in the film.
Right.
Ellen Burstyn is so good in this movie, which she's just all the men mansplaining to her about what's wrong with her daughter. And she's just looking, I love her character. She's so strong. She's just wonderful in the part.
Ellen Burstyn is why the film works, and Ellen Burstyn is, I think, the finest actress of her generation that we have in this country. When you look at the things she's done, whether it's Resurrection, which is a miraculous film, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, even back to the Last Picture Show, or King of Marvin Garden, I mean, she brings such authenticity and such reality to all these varied roles. She's just a marvel, and she was so kind to speak with me.
Did you see the latest Exorcist?
I haven't seen Exorcist Believer. There's a reason I haven't seen it. There's actually two reasons. One, David Gordon Green, who co-wrote and directed it, was so gracious in giving me an interview about his film before we'd even started shooting it because of the lead time of publishing the book. And secondly, I'm going to be asked questions like this, and I don't want to have to give a review of the film in 1 or 2 sentences. I want to be more thoughtful about it. So I will see it eventually, but right now, I just want to thank him very much for being so generous when he didn't have to be.
I haven't seen it yet either. I think it's just now available to rent, or I'm sorry, to buy on TV. So I might watch it this weekend, actually, in my continuing quest to watch all the Exorcist movies.
Have you seen both versions of Legion, by the way? Have you seen both versions of Legion, Exorcist 3 and Legion? Oh, Shout Factory, under their label of Scream Factory. They've reconstructed, Mark Kermode worked with Bill Blatty to reconstruct his original cut of Exorcist 3, which was called Legion, with Brad Dourif doing a monumental role as the killer. And that's contrasted with the one which has him interspersed with Jason Miller, which was the version that was released as Exorcist 3, that Blatty wrote and directed himself.
Yeah.
It really has resonance.
I really liked Exorcist 3. I watched it on Shudder. I thought it was really good. And actually, I hadn't seen it ever before. I had only seen the first one in its various incarnations. So I was pleasantly surprised, I guess. Like, people were like, because it's hard to compare it to the original. The original is a classic for a reason. Yeah. But I thought there was some legit scares in that third one. And
it has one of the greatest shocks in screen history.
Yes.
And we're not going to give that away as a spoiler.
No. No. But I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Right.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
It's very unexpected. That's what's really fun about it. Because you think you've seen all the shots at this point if you watch a lot of horror movies. Yeah. And the perspective is really interesting. What about Kitty, the one who plays Sharon, the assistant? What happened to her?
Kitty Wynn has disappeared. I tried agents. We all tried IMDb Pro. Tried agents, tried managers, tried everywhere. And she seems to have disappeared. And she was a fine actress, too. But, she was in that, and she was in Heretic. And maybe that's about it, Heretic. It's like Fight Club. We don't talk about it.
We don't talk about that.
No. It's pretty terrible. But she's also, is it Panic in Needle Park?
That was, I think, her first major film with Al Pacino. Sure, it's a remarkable performance. Well, God help Bobby and Helen. They're in love in Needle Park. A great campaign and a really, really good film.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's funny with the actors. Sometimes they just sort of retire and just kind of float away, and it's sort of hard to imagine.
It's worse for women because there's only a few years where Hollywood sexism considers them viable as leading roles. Then they have to come back 20 years later and play the ogre. But it's really tough for a young woman, and especially today when there's so fewer films being made. A woman can strike it big in one movie and then, it disappears for a while.
Yeah.
Was there anything you weren't able to publish in the book?
No, I must say the lawyers at Kensington Citadel did a pretty good job of making sure that I could publish it. There's no big secrets or anything like that. I didn't go into many of the personal lives of people unless that happened. But no, I had a very free hand. I had a lot of people goading me along the way, and because it was a kind of a personal project of mine, I'm happy I was finally able to put a cap on it, and after half a century move on to something else, which I did with the book on Scarface, which came out yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
How's that for
I just got that. I love your sneaky plugs. No, I have it actually right next to me because I met you and I have the same publicist at Kensington. So yeah, she's on top of it. Let's just.
Anne Fryer is wonderful. Anne Fryer
shout out. Yeah. Shout out to Anne. What are your other movies you're hoping to write about? So I will compete with you.
Well, there's one I'm working on now for surprise Kensington that I'm not talking about, but it's almost done if my editor is watching, and I think I'll turn that in sometime in November, maybe a bit early. I'm trying to write a number of other books. The one I have coming out next year, which is a real different change for me, I guess, although it's sort of like my auto-premature book, Breaking the Code. It's coming out from a new publisher called Sticking Place Books, and it's about 50 or 53 classic American movies and the run-ins they had with the production code, with Hollywood censors while they were being made. The letters back and forth from the production code office to the producers and to the head of the studio saying you can't do this, this is what you can do. I mean, the letters themselves you could never put on the screen because they're so vulgar. But it's a book about the stuff we weren't allowed to see, and it's called The Naughty Bits. It's coming out.
Like that.
Coming out in March.
The shit out of that book.
It's a lot of fun. A friend of mine has started a new publishing house called Sticking Place, and we worked on getting the book out. And my super agent, Lee Sobel, who, if he watches this, is going to praise me for mentioning his name, also set up the deal. So, yeah.
People don't know this, but in the 1920s, when film came out, it was actually pretty risque. There's I think it was like the first version of Chicago that's ever out. Like you could see nude pictures on the walls, like in the newspaper scene. It's kind of funny. Yeah. And then this started to happen. And then all of a sudden people came along like, oh, wait a second. People are seeing this. They're bringing kids to the movies. We got to, yes. And then the Catholic League, of course, has to always come in and screw things up.
Right. Well, that's a whole other story, which I'll tell if we talk next time in the spring. But I'll tell you one thing I didn't notice in Scarface, but a very astute viewer and reader of my book told me that. In the 1932 Scarface, which came in just before the code was applied, but they still had a list of things they couldn't do. There's somebody who mumbles the F word twice. And if you really listen to it, you could hear it. In 1932, I was astonished to find that out.
Because supposedly that didn't hit to the 60s, right? It was, I forget which movie had the first F word, but there's a couple.
I think it was in Robert Altman's Match when you had John Schuck telling the guy,
I think you're right.
All right, boy, all right, bub, your effing head is coming right off. But that's, it had been used in independent films, of course, and nouveau films before that. But I don't want to get off the subject here, although the F word does appear in The Exorcist. How's that for getting us back on track?
Going through my questions. Let's see. This is just a nosy writer question. How long did it take you to write it?
I have never been cursed with writer's block, fortunately, so it took me as long to write it as I could get the interviews with people. So I'd say maybe 6 months spread over the course of a year. But, I worked in newspapers and live radio and TV for 20-some years when I lived in Boston. Deadlines are something which are ingrained in me, and so it's something that you just do. And then, of course, you rewrite.
Yes.
You want to get it down on paper first. As Ernest Hemingway supposedly said, the secret of writing is the application of your ass to the seat.
That's what Stephen King does. Every day he writes. That's it. Except for his birthday and Christmas.
Right. I know.
That's it. Even when he's in an accident, you can't stop the guy.
No,
accident. He was run over. But...
No, yes. I remember visiting him once. I was doing a TV feature on it for one of Boston's TV stations. And in those days, computers, of course, were in. But I'd never seen a printer like he had. The printer was the size of a Volkswagen. And it was an industrial strength printer. When he had print, the pages just kept on coming out like it was a money machine, which of course it was. But I've never seen anything. I mean, it was like one of those dorm room refrigerators, that big, and it was and that's him writing. He's an amazing writer and a highly political one. Although I don't think people know that when they read his novels the first time. He's very much connected to the way things are. But that's
if you follow him on Twitter, he is very political. And our thoughts are with, obviously, it's so terrible like today, what's happening in Maine. This is like near where he's from.
Yes.
I mean,
I know.
The horror is like when you were speaking before about the movie and they were talking about why does the devil do this? Like, why does the devil want us to despair? It's yeah. I mean,
we have lots to despair about. And I don't think it's the devil that does it.
No. No, that's a happy point to end it, right? I'm just kidding. Sonia, think of a good question. A happy question.
Something I can answer about baby ducks and unicorns.
Let's talk about our dogs. And
okay. I will tell you one thing, which I've been asked before, but I think it pretty much summarizes why The Exorcist works. Not just because of religious indoctrination, but you see, it's the kind of movie it is. It's about people, not about demons. And in fact, if you go to see a horror movie in the theater and you've got Frankenstein's monster or the Wolfman or the Mummy or Dracula, and you leave the theater, the monsters are still in the theater. But when you get home, Satan could be waiting for you in your bedroom closet.
Right.
That's how pervasive the belief system is, and why I think The Exorcist has worked for 50 years and still does work.
Manolo Dargis said in the New York Times, Anne was telling me this yesterday, but that it's interesting because that's 73 is the year Roe versus Wade, right? That happened.
Yeah.
And so here we have a story about a woman and her body having control over her body, and then 50 years later, women not having control over their bodies and fighting for that.
There are many, many resonances in the film, especially that. There's also, and Stephen King pointed this out, that it's about the younger generation going away from the control of the older generation. Parents all over America were worried about the Vietnam protests, about Watergate. Their kids were turning on, they were smoking pot, they were swearing a lot more. They were dancing to music. They were wearing bell-bottoms. The parents were losing control of the kids, and that's precisely what happens between Chris McNeil and Reagan McNeil. So the film was not only a metaphor, it's also its own story.
Reagan's a very innocent 12-year-old, too. Considering her mom's a movie star, she's really pretty grounded, except for the devil stuff
Oh, that
happens to her.
Well,
Captain Howdy's, that's his fault.
remember, Reagan comes from a broken home. The father is off somewhere, and the mother's trying to reach him by telephone on her birthday. Reagan is extremely centered, which, of course, is what makes her descent into demondom ever so much more effective. And Chris has also been a very good mother, protecting her daughter and raising her well so that she's insulated from the Hollywood bullshit.
Right. Do you want to hear the top 10 songs for when this movie came out?
Before we do that, I just wanted
well, my dog isn't on the couch anymore, so I guess it's just me.
I wanted to mention, like, the very best movie. My favorite movies are the ones that I can watch at any time in my life, and I can pull something new from it. Margot and I talk a lot about how movies don't really change, we do. And so, like, watching The Exorcist when I was younger, I was like, that's terrifying. Like, what if I was Reagan, like, putting myself in Reagan's shoes? And now I'm a single mom with a 12-year-old son, and I put my, like, how terrifying. What if that was my boy? Like, and it's beyond your control, and you're, like, putting your faith in others, and that is absolutely terrifying. And I'm curious how I'll feel about it 10 years from now, because you never know. Like,
it's remarkable. Films can be like that when you see them. There's a movie, we're probably so far off subject now, it would take a lasso to get us back.
That's fine.
A movie called 1,000 Clowns, which is written by Herb Gardner, came out in the 60s. Jason Robards plays an unemployed kiddie show television writer who's purposely unemployed because he thought the kids were starting to get to him. And he's a nonconformist. And you watch that movie, as I did when it came out, and I said, wow, what a wonderful nonconformist. A few years later, after I'd been working myself, I said, boy, he's really putting his nephew in jeopardy by not working. A few years after that, I said, it's about time he told the world to get some goosey. And after that, I said, gosh, he's irresponsible. So a good piece of drama can mean different things to you at different times.
Yes.
I call 1,000 Clowns as an example of that. But, look at Shakespeare, look at Hamlet, look at all the great literature. It means different things to different people whenever they encounter it. Catcher in the Rye. Try reading that one every 10 years and see how you feel about it.
Yeah. I was on one of my first times I was on F This Movie, which is another movie podcast. We talked about the movie Big. And when I was young, a teenager, I saw it and I thought about Josh and isn't Tom Hanks fun and silly? And then about 10 years ago, I watched the movie and all I could think of is this poor mother whose son is taken away from her. And nobody takes her seriously. Like, there's no one looking for him. Like, that's all I saw. Because, like, it killed me. I was like, what are we laughing about here?
Thriller that's, like, happening on the other side of the movie.
Right.
Like the Zeppo episode on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes.
Good art, great art, substantive art can be interpreted by people whenever they see it, whether it's a painting or a television show or literature. That's what we have to reach for. That's what we want to go for, not just do another slasher film, but to do a film that means something to people. Yes. You have to have rich characters. You have to have realistic situations, even if they're off the scale. You have to have some sort of anchor in a reality that keeps the audience involved. And that's The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Now let's.
Well, thanks very much for calling.
Okay, let's finish up. We always do this on our show, Nat. We talk about what were the top 10 songs in America the week this came out. So, and this is a fabulous list. So, number 10, Barry White, Never Never Gonna Give You Up.
Love.
Good song.
Love.
Number 9, Brownsville Station, Smoking in the Boys' Room. Number 8, Al Wilson, Show and Tell. Great song.
I love that song.
Number 7, very 70s here. The Carpenters, Top of the World.
Oh,
it's such a. Number 5, Todd Rundgren, Hello, It's Me. Great song.
That's one of my sister's favorite songs still. Like,
say,
she loved
number 5, sorry. Then we have Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Great song, great album.
Oh my God, this is a great list.
It's an awesome list. Number 4, Steve Miller Band, The Joker. Couldn't escape that. Still can't.
Nope.
I love this one. My mother was a huge Helen Reddy fan. I listened to this all through the 70s. Leave Me Alone, Ruby Red Dress. My mom sang this all the time. Number 2, the most beautiful girl in the world, Charlie Rich. And the number 1 song, 1974. This is so sad. Jim Croce, Time in a Bottle.
Oh, that I don't like to listen to that song. It bums me out.
Yeah, well, I didn't hear Tubular Bells on there.
No, I was gonna say Tubular Bells. But it was like, didn't that chart? I think that actually was played on the radio.
Soundtracks don't usually appear unless they're derivative from something else or they're eidetic music. But yeah, I'm sure it was everywhere.
All right, well, our call's going to end in 15 minutes. So, Nia, do you want to wrap things up? Google just sent me a note.
Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us and talk about your book. Can you tell people where they can find you on the internet and buy your books?
Sure. My website is www.natsegaloff.com. You can also Google me because I'm everywhere. And, of course, you can buy the book from Barnes & Noble, from Amazon, from any of the fine online stores. But if you pay full price, then I'll make my full royalty. But it's also in bookstores, which is kind of unusual these days. Kensington Citadel has done a job at getting it there. So just look up my name. You'll find something about me.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for taking the time. And we're going to talk about The Exorcist now, right? Yep. All right.
Thank you so much for letting me be on your show. Happy Halloween. We're after that.